Hello, ServeWellers. This week's lesson is an important one where I will try to impress upon you the importance of studying for the SAT or the ACT this summer. It is critical, and I don't think I have to spend a lot more time going over why this test score is so important for your application. I have hammered this point home many times over the last few months, and by now you should realize that this is no joke. And yes, I know that most colleges are still test optional for the SAT or the ACT, either temporarily or permanently, but please don't let that distract you. There are reasons behind the spread of test optional policies that I'm not going to get into right now. But believe me, the policies may not be a good thing for you, especially if you're applying to a highly selective program. So, whether the service academies or the colleges on your ROTC wish list are test optional or not, it does not matter in my opinion. You should do everything you can, everything in your power, to get a strong score on one of these tests. And the best way to do that, drum roll please, is to prepare for the test this summer and not wait until your junior year. Let me repeat that. To achieve the best score you can, you want to prepare for the SAT or the ACT this summer and not during your junior year. Now, the one caveat here is that you are at least one grade level ahead in math. If you are in grade level math right now, you might not be far enough along to begin this SAT study in earnest this summer. Most of the students that I've worked with are at least one math grade ahead. They've taken pre-calc, or they're in honors math or AP or some accelerated math class. Assuming this is you, you do not want to leave your SAT prep as a to-do item in the middle of your junior year, your most challenging year in high school. You will have many other priorities next year, like taking challenging classes, excelling in those classes, performing well for the teachers who will write your letters of recommendation, preparing for AP exams, taking on the big leadership roles, playing your sport, dealing with recruitment issues if you're an athlete. And the list goes on and on and on. Do you really want the job of studying for the SAT to be hanging over your head for the entire year? Fact check, no, you do not. The best case scenario is that you prepare for the test this summer, and then you take that test in August, September, October of your junior year, with maybe November as your backup. This will allow you to use the summer to get fully primed and ready to roll right before that test, instead of trying to squeeze it in the spring with 10 other competing priorities. If you spend the last 4 to 6 weeks of this summer preparing for the SAT, and we'll talk about what that means in a few weeks, you will peak at just the right time. And yes, if you're wondering how many of your peers actually do this, the answer, sadly, for them, is not many. You will be in the minority among your peers. Not many of your friends will be doing this. So be prepared for some pushback from them. And that's okay. My guess is that not many of your friends probably aspire to do what you want to do. Not many of your friends probably have somebody like me showing them the way. They're doing what everyone else is doing, and that's not what you want to be doing. You want to be different. So when your friends are wondering why you're studying over the summer, and they tell you that it's way too early and stop stressing out and why don't you calm down, just take a deep breath, smile and say to them, nod your head, yeah, I know, I just thought I'd get a head start on studying a little bit. Next year is supposed to be really busy. And that's it. You don't have to apologize for studying. You don't have to convince them to study. Just do your own thing and carve your own path. They will figure out their own business at some point. And mind you, your friends will not be the only ones suggesting that spring of your junior year is in fact the right time to start thinking about the SAT. Your teachers, your guidance counselors, other parents, social media, they have all been conditioned to tell you the same thing. And they're telling you that not out of malice, but because they're assuming you're like everyone else who takes the traditional path. They're assuming you're a sheep, and you're not a sheep. Now, in their defense, there are some practical reasons why waiting a little bit longer to take the SAT may make some sense for your average student. Reason number one, you may not be ready. As I alluded to earlier, you may not have covered every one of the math concepts that you'll see on the SAT or the ACT quite yet, depending on what your math progression has been like over the last few years. That's a fair point, especially for students who have not yet gotten to pre-calc or some of the more advanced math classes. However, I would still prefer that you spend 4 to 6 weeks in deep study for the SAT over the summer with no distractions instead of just waiting for 6 months, hoping that you'll cover a few esoteric math concepts that you haven't quite covered yet. Most students by the end of sophomore year have covered the lion's share of math on these tests. And if you haven't, you can either spend a little bit of time studying ahead, you could try to get a tutor, or just resolve to not worry about those last few questions and focus on mastering what you do know. I mean, after all, for most students, the goal here is not perfection. Not that many students are shooting for the 1600 SAT or the 36 on the ACT test. Those are perfect scores. And if they are well beyond the math that is tested on the SAT or the ACT, so they'll be fine. Reason number two, by the spring of your junior year, you will simply be 8 or 9 months smarter than you were at the end of the summer. You will have taken more classes, you will have taken more tests, you will have had more life experience, and simply be more generally prepared. However, again, if I had two choices, choice number one, spend 4 to 6 weeks over the summer studying and practicing for the test, or choice number two, hope that I'm 9 months smarter by the spring, even though I've had no time to specifically prepare for the test, I'm taking choice number one every single time. Study for the test. There are a few other reasons that I'll bring up that I think make this case even more strongly. By taking an early test, you ensure that you have plenty of time to recover in case the test doesn't go well for you. Maybe you got sick, maybe there was an emergency, maybe there, God forbid, was another worldwide pandemic. In my son's case, he took his first SAT in September and he misbubbled his test and he had to cancel it. But luckily, he was able to take it again in November, and that was it. He crushed that test, and he never looked back. If you wait to take your first test till May or June your junior year, and you screw it up, now you're forced to take one over the summer, or maybe even into your senior year, and then the pressure starts to mount. If you're an athlete hoping to get recruited, it's best to provide coaches with an early SAT score, assuming it's a good one, because without an SAT score, as great as you say you may be, coaches may be reluctant to invest too much time in you because they'll be wasting their time if you can't deliver an acceptable SAT score. So send them a signal early that you're worth a look because your grades and your SAT score are at least in the ballpark. Which brings me to another general point and the premise behind ServeWell Academy, which is that early is almost always better than late. This is especially the case when it comes to the military and the admissions process for the military. Remember, you will soon be applying for congressional nominations, asking teachers for letters of recommendation, filling out service academy applications, maybe even applying early to an ROTC college. So the sooner you have all of the relevant parts of your application done, the better. Taking an early test also sends you a signal. Are you delivering yourself an SAT score that's consistent with your goals, whether it's for the Naval Academy or for Princeton ROTC? For example, if you're pulling a 950 or an 1100 on the SAT, then you've got some major work to do. If you don't figure this out until your junior year, it's probably too late for you to recover, and you've probably wasted a lot of time spinning your wheels unnecessarily. If you get a score early, assuming you prepared for it, and it's not to your liking, guess what? You'll have time to recover. You can either study more, maybe hire a tutor, maybe practice more, or whatever it takes to reach your goal. Another reason to study this summer, even if it turns out that you didn't score as well as you'd hoped, or that you still want to try a few more tests, is that you've gotten the bulk of your studying done already. You've done 80% of the hard work. And if you want to continue studying and practicing and refining, great. But the heavy lifting is done, and that's a huge weight off your shoulders. And speaking of taking multiple tests, unlike some traditional colleges, the service academies don't penalize candidates for taking multiple tests. In fact, they encourage applicants to take several tests because most of the service academies will superscore your tests, meaning that they're going to take the best scores on each subsection, even from different test dates, and combine them into a single superscore. So by taking an early test, it gives you more time to take more tests, which may translate into a better superscore. However, please don't take this the wrong way. You should still study and prepare for the test as if it's your last one. Don't take official SAT and ACT tests as practice. And also, I know what you're thinking. Don't count on taking 7, 8, or 9 SAT tests, hoping to luck out on a few of them. This strategy would be expensive and would waste a lot of time. Well, I've hoped I've convinced you to carve out 4 to 6 weeks this summer for consistent, deep study for the SAT or the ACT. Until next week, continue to study hard, play hard, and don't forget to serve others.